I was about 9 or 10 when my uncle called me into the room with no one in the house. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ngozi, and if you're new to the channel, then don't forget to subscribe and click on that little notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also, you can like the video and comment down below if you want to carry on the conversation that we're having today. This is a very real matter, an issue that is affecting our society today, particularly our young children, our children that depend on us for safety within their home. Now, my first encounter with sexual abuse as a child was many years ago. I think it was about 9 or 10 thereabout, and we had an uncle living with us. Now my mum and dad, would be able to go off and carry on with their endeavors, whether it was work, business, and he was that stable person at home to make sure these kids, right, myself and my immediate senior sibling, were looked after and taken care of and taken to school and brought home. The older siblings were in boarding school at the time, and what happened is my parents didn't realize that this man would bring in women into the house and engage in all forms of sodomy in the bedroom. Myself and my immediate senior sibling would be outside because he would send us out, and the kids in the area playing around in the neighborhood would all gather and start staring, trying to look through the window, have a peek, see what was going on. And this was sort of the environment that I was in, aware that this was going on. I knew what was going on to some degree, but I couldn't quite tell what it was, but it piques that interest in the young mind of a child. On one occasion, my dad had driven out and I was home alone with my uncle. As soon as my dad drove out, my uncle called me into the room, pulled me closer, started taking off my clothes. And he was saying things to me. He was saying, this is going to be good. You're going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I'm just going to do something to you, okay? I'm just going to do something to you. Took my top bits off, exposed himself. And as soon as he was taking off my lower clothing, my dad just drove back in onto the property. He had just driven off for, say, 3 or 4 minutes and had just driven back. So it was as though he had forgotten something. And my uncle quickly put my stuff back on, and that was that first incident. I remember in that moment wondering, what was that? And it was lodged in my brain, and, put a pin in it. And this has to be visited again. That was the first introduction. The next time I had an experience like this, I was walking down a bush trail behind our house. It's the trail I used to go on an errand, or it's the trail I used to go to fellowship. And I remember being about 10 or 11, thereabout. I would be able to run off to fellowship on my own or run an errand for my parents. And I was around this trail area. I can't quite say where I was going or what the intention of that movement was, but this man came up on the trail behind me, and the way you'd put your hand over a friend, he put his hand over my shoulder, but being a lot taller, his hand was pointed downwards, and he just let it slither into my blouse, and he started touching me. It shifted my balance of innocence, and there were these emotions that I'd never experienced before, and I didn't know what was going on. And this is the difference between an adult and a child. A child is having their brain deal with the new, introduction of emotions and feelings coming through from this interaction. And during that period, they're not able to make a decision to say, don't do that. It's more of an introduction to something new and surprising that they're not able to make that decision. Why do I have to explain that? And I shouldn't have to explain that, because adults, particularly where I come from, tend to blame the child for these experiences. We've heard it many times before. It's as though it's your fault this is happening and you should have done something about it. Why did you let that happen? You can't expect that of a child. While this was happening and that sensation was going through my body and my brain couldn't understand what was going on, we were still walking along while this was happening, and he was chatting and he was having a conversation. I didn't know what he was saying, but during that moment, we wandered off the trail of where I was headed to his little area where people lived in little houses, and he got me up to his front door. I remember coming up to the front door and looking over to the side, and there was this woman who was pounding away at some food, and she was pounding away, and I saw her look up at me, and I felt so ashamed. I just thought, oh, She's seen me. I'm a naughty girl. I felt so embarrassed, and she kept pounding away, and she gave me a steady gaze. And he was like, just come in, you know, and he touched his bed. He said, come and sit down here. There's no problem. Just come and sit down here. And the pounding was going on, and I was distracted by this woman pounding away and the embarrassment, and I stood in the doorway, and he was encouraging me to come in, and I was listening to this woman's pounding and her steady gaze, and it was as though I could see in her eyes that she had seen many girls come in to this place and leave different. And I remember just feeling that overwhelming feeling of embarrassment and shame. I just ran out of there like a bat out of hell and took off. That was the second encounter I had had with that sort of experience. The third time this happened, I was on a journey with my mom across states. So this journey was, say, about 4 or 5 hours long, maybe 6. Can't say how long it was. For a child, it felt like forever. It was at nighttime, and it was a long enough journey in public transport. It was a long enough journey for the driver to have to stop so that passengers can get out, stretch their legs, walk across to hawkers, make some purchases, maybe use the bathroom, and then everyone would get back in and the journey would continue. We got to such a stop, and my mum hopped out to go and get some snacks by the roadside, and that was the case with other passengers in the car. She said I should stay behind, and she went off to go get these items. And it was just across the road. You wouldn't think as a parent that just going across the road, someone else, a passenger in the car, would attack. So obviously all the seats are facing forward, and where I was sat, we had another person in the next seat in front of me facing forward. And this man watched until the last person left the vehicle, and he just stuck his hand behind and started trying to reach for my underwear, kept trying to reach for my underwear. He didn't manage to harm me or change me in any way, but he was close enough to trigger that feeling again, that curious feeling I had, experienced twice already. And I remember pushing backwards and feeling very uncomfortable when he would try, and I kept moving backwards, and I so afraid that I was doing something wrong, and oh my God, my mom is going to kill me. And I was moving backwards, and I thought, oh gosh, what's going on? And my mom was just a few meters away. As they started coming back to the car, he gave up on the attempt, and everyone got into the car and we drove off. I couldn't tell my mom that. Not a chance. We grew up in a home where we didn't have that kind of relationship, and it just wasn't, something was happening that I didn't even understand what that was, but I just knew something was wrong. And being a child raised in an environment where you are beaten when you do something wrong, that equaled something I had done wrong, and so shut up. The next experience I had was in another state, Kano, in the northern part of Nigeria. I remember I was living with my mum, just myself and my mum. So 1 bedroom and a living room and a bathroom on the outside of the property. I remember it vividly. And my school was just a straight road all the way to the top, and I could just pop into school, and after school I could walk all the way back home on my own. I maybe was about 11 years old, still 10, 11, I can't quite remember, but my mum would go to work, and she got confident with the idea that I could make it to school and back, because that was the school over there, and you could just come back home, unlock the door, and eat food that was already prepared until she came back from work. That's how it had to be. That's the case for many single mums. At the time, she wasn't a single mum. My mum's never been a single mum, so to say. She was married, but she would be a single mum in those circumstances, if you understand what I mean. So I understand that that's the case for many single mums. You try to make it work, and once your child is able to walk from here to there, you throw them into it. Yes, you can understand. So we'd leave together in the morning, but I'll be home and be alone for a few hours before she would return. So maybe about 3 hours after school, and then my mum would show up, but I would be inside the house. And there was this girl across the way, I'll never forget. She just noticed the pattern, I assume, and then knocked on the door one day, and I opened the door, and she said, come play with us. She was a lot older, she was taller. She said, come play with us. And I said, okay. And I came out the house, tippy-toed, as though my mum was already in there. That's how scared I was. And she just took me straight into her room. We didn't play. She just took me straight into her room, took all the clothes off, took all her clothes off and just got on top of me. And I didn't know what she was doing, but perhaps she thought I was a boy or something of the sort, but she got on top of me and was just trying to do something. And I remember just looking up at her and thinking, what's going on? Nothing happened. And then I got up and, I left. And the next time she said, come and play with us, I refused. It was weird. I didn't understand what was going on. And I thought that was weird. And I didn't tell my parents. However, research shows that children leave clues behind when they are being sexually molested. If a child is being beaten at home, they might draw a picture of their mum and a monster, and the teacher would take note and then contact the family and say, look at what your kid's been drawing, is everything okay at home? And parents get annoyed and think, well, back off, And in my case, being someone who draws, I left a clue without realizing it. Children don't intend to leave these clues, but they're going to show at one point in time or the other. It did happen on occasion that I left a clue. I didn't mean to, but I did leave a clue. And this happened in a different state where we were living. And in the state, we lived in a hotel. Why did we live in a hotel? We didn't need to live in a family house because my mom's job took her to that part of our country. And during that period, it was only going to be for like a year, and we didn't need to move into a whole house. So after that year, we would return back to our house. So we stayed in a hotel. And that hotel, obviously, as you can imagine, had hotel apartments, and they were all the same. But what's unique about this hotel apartment that we lived in is, besides the front door you come through into your own apartment, there is an adjoining door between your hotel apartment and the next hotel apartment, and that door is locked. Maybe if you had a bigger family, then it will be opened up and you can use both apartments, you know what I mean? And in this case, it was locked. I'll explain why I'm telling you this. I remember in school, at the back of my book, and I drew this diagram. I hemorrhaged some of what was going on with me onto paper. And I drew this rickety bed, one person lying on there and the next person on top. It doesn't take a scientist to figure out what, the picture was talking about. And then I just moved on and carried on with my life like nothing. It was just a drawing. It had come from my subconscious out onto paper. It happened that my mum saw this picture, and here's what happened. We were living with my auntie as well, and this aunt is someone obviously who was staying with us. There's always someone who's staying with us to help out, and my auntie was living with us in that hotel. She would jump in if my mum was going to beat us for whatever reason, but what my mum did this time was lock the living room door and then call me and say, what is this? I was shocked. I was scared. I had done it. I had been caught. I had done something wrong, and now you're gonna get it. It's my fault, and my bad behavior had caught up with me. Now, what happened after my mum had found this clue is the very reason children don't speak out about sexual abuse. I will be uploading the second part to this video in the next couple of days, so don't forget to subscribe, click on that notification bell, so as soon as the video goes live, you'll be able to catch up from where we left off, and I will see you again soon in the next video. Take care. Bye.